What is going on, everybody? We're live. Thing just fully fired up. Go time, baby. Good. Thank you for your patience. All right, good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Joaquin Acosta, your guide and companion on the enlightening journey of Know Your Pharmacist, brought to you by Pharmtrue. As the CEO of Pharmtrue and a passionate advocate for holistic wellness, I'm thrilled to welcome you to our special live stream tonight on December 28th, 2023. Tonight, we're diving into a captivating world where health meets innovation and stories of transformation redefine our understanding of healing. We'll embark on a fascinating exploration starting with the remarkable transition of Riley Cote from NHL enforcer to a staunch advocate for psychedelic therapy and cannabis use. His journey is not just about changing careers, it's about a profound narrative of personal growth, mental health, and the healing powers of alternative therapies. In our Tech Talk, we'll unravel the intricate web of mindfulness in the corporate sphere. Far from just being the corporate jargon, mindfulness is a tool for profound personal and professional transformation rooted in ancient wisdom, yet perfectly suited for our fast-paced modern world. During the Enlightenment Hour, we'll delve into the concept of radical open-mindedness introduced by Ray Dalio. It's more than just a mindset. It's a gateway to a richer, more diverse understanding of the world around us, fostering a culture of growth, empathy, and enlightened thinking. And the Herbal Wellness Corner will shine a light on how cannabis has played a pivotal role in the lives of athletes like Riley Cote, offering natural relief and a path to holistic health. We celebrate the plant's versatility and emerging role in mainstream medicine. Our community spotlight turns to the heroes at Mountain View Regional Medical Group here in Las Cruces, Doctors of Osteopathic Medicine Department specifically, where the integration of osteopathic medicine provides a unique patient-centered approach to healthcare, highlighting the importance of treating the whole person, not just the symptoms. And in our Men's Health Minute, we'll discuss the simple yet impactful dietary changes for heart health. These are small steps with a big impact, emphasizing prevention, wellness, and the power of lifestyle choices. Big shout out to our sponsors, Pharmtrue, High Horse Cannabis Company, Vado Speedway Park, and the Big Chicken Farm for supporting our mission to empower, educate, and elevate community health. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired, informed, and invigorated. Whether you're a healthcare professional, a wellness enthusiast, or someone just seeking a deeper understanding of health and healing, you're in the right place. So let's embark on a journey together, fostering a world where knowledge leads to wellness and wellness leads to happiness. Welcome to Know Your Pharmacist. Let's make tonight's episode another step towards a healthier, more enlightened world, guys. So jumping into the life of Riley Cote, from NHL to psychedelic therapy advocate, guys. I want to share this with you because I think this is, a very great transformation from a professional athlete to the wellness coach scene, right? As we, have seen in instances, the wellness coach scene not always go, according to plan and things like that. But, people who are really making something out of themselves there can actually, really transform some lives. And, obviously here, this is a great story. Riley Cote started with himself, former NHL enforcer. I'm going to share with you guys a little bit of his story here, some of his, thoughts on microdosing mushrooms. We'll talk about his opinions on cannabis here a little bit later in our Herbal Wellness Corner, brought to you by High Horse Cannabis Company as well. So, again, I think Riley Cote is a great example of a athlete, professional, who transitioned out of the sporting world and into the wellness and holistic health, personal coaching environment, and where he has his own, website now and his own coaching plans. I think you guys are going to see a little bit more into a successful pathway for doing this, right? Ricky Williams from the NFL, he had he went through it all before, he started actually kind of turning it into, his passion, into a profitable thing for himself. But he had to really go through the ringer there. Riley Cote had, the later side of it all to be able to kind of already have a better chance of success by not having to basically, lose his job. He got to play his career out, anyways, we'll talk about some of his thoughts and opinions here. But I think it's still very important there to look at that intersection of professional sports and, cannabis, because it's not just those two things. It's crossing it with, holistic health and really looking at the individual there. Again, those athletes that are already at that level really can really look at a different view. However, to get out of that level and transition into something else, where they've solidified themselves as a singular, person for maybe 30 plus years, I think that's a very interesting take here. So Riley Cote, talking about this podcast that he was just on from NFL Enforcer, talked about his advocacy for psychedelic and psychedelic assisted therapy. And so host David Flores caught up with the former Philadelphia Flyer and NFL Enforcer Riley Cote, who in years became one of the most recent prominent and outspoken advocates for psychedelic and psychedelic assisted therapy. Anyways, very interesting. We're going to talk about, I'm going to show you his website right now. He's showing how it really highlighted the healing journeys of retired athletes who spent several years participating in physically violent sports. So again, physically violent, hockey, football, and boxing, taking a deep dive into the debated and at times controversial topic. Anyways, we know how much of a controversial topic it already is. We don't need to necessarily talk about that part of the podcast, but showing you guys rileycote.com here. I think it's cool. He talks about the psilocybin microdosing here, just reading a little bit of excerpts from his recommendations. And I don't have, a lot of counter data pulled up or not. I do think it's very interesting to look at the promise of, this kind of microdosing, especially when we know the detrimental effects of other antidepressants out there in our, Western medicine culture as is. So, welcome to the world of microdosing, the act of consuming small amounts of a psychedelic substance. Many individuals who have integrated microdosing psilocybin mushrooms into their weekly routine report higher levels of creativity, more energy, increased focus, and improved relational skills. Some enthusiasts also report that microdosing psilocybin helps to heighten spiritual awareness and enhance their senses. Even addictions such as smoking can be overcome with psilocybin. Researchers at Johns Hopkins reported an 80% abstinence rate among a group of longtime smokers who took mushrooms, psilocybin, as part of their cognitive behavioral therapy. Aside from psychological issues, mushrooms have been found to be comparable or, more efficacious than most conventional medicines in treating cluster headaches. Another thing there, many people experience extended periods of remission after taking them. So, bringing it back to the history of microdosing here. The modern history of psychedelics reaches back to the 50s. Interest in microdosing started a major revitalization with the publishing of Dr. James Fadiman's Psychedelic Explorer's Guide, Safe Therapeutic and Sacred Journeys in 2011. The book explores microdosing as a subculture of psychedelic use. It awakened the curiosity and imaginations of millions of people. Then came the podcast interview by Fadiman with Tim Ferriss in March of 2015. Ferriss, who rose to fame after authoring the bestseller The 4-Hour Work Week, has an enormous audience of individuals interested in entrepreneurship, biohacking, self-experimentation, psychology, spirituality, and other subjects that predispose them to an interest in the benefits of microdosing. So it all takes off from there. The advocacy starts to be able to pull because you get a large-scale opinion out, right? And anyways, taking it down to our science and the brain and flow states, let's give you guys a little bit of the process here. So psilocybin sharing a similar structure to serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter, right? It's why they're saying, the substance has comparable effects when microdosed. Many antidepressants, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or SSRIs, try to make it more plentiful in the brain to make you feel better. Psychedelics work more directly by mimicking serotonin. This means that one of their main effects is to stimulate, the serotonin receptor, 5-HT2A receptor located in the prefrontal cortex. Stimulating the serotonin receptor leads to two important results: production of brain-derived neurotropic factor, which is like miracle grow for your brain, stimulating growth, connections, and activity. Increased transmission of glutamate, the neurotransmitter most responsible for brain functions like cognition, learning, and memory. Glutamate and BDNF work together in ways we're still understanding, but it become much more clear that it leads to many benefits that microdosers are seeking. So glutamate, also something athletes can definitely take there, and it's not related to mushrooms. But talking about the human brain, this is something that we're going to continue to discuss a little bit more in this podcast, and obviously throughout the entire duration of this thing. But looking at where the human brain is such an interesting, organ, electric, data processing piece of goo. It's very, very interesting to see how to, just consider it in life and do what you can with what you know, right? So, talking about this flow states, part of your actual brain waves and your flow of it. But anyways, studies showing here moderate doses of psilocybin, cause brainwaves to shift towards alpha oscillations, also seen in the transition to a flow state, right? Something that meditation in and of itself can induce. You can use, drug-assisted flow states, right, with things like cannabis or obviously psilocybin here. But again, just knowing that, I think you're using the drug to get to the goal of, right, being able to induce that default mode network of the brain, responsible for the array of mental activities, including daydreaming, self-reflection, thinking about the past or future, using that properly, kind of displacing that ego in the prefrontal cortex, getting out of the amygdala, right? We'll talk a little bit about that, but again, that's the purpose of using those drugs for a positive, right, outcome based on the neuroscience that's underlying. And again, recommended schedule to do it with mushrooms here and psilocybin, ones that they have, talking about lion's mane, cordyceps, reiki, chaga, turkey tail. I'm going to share with you guys here the link to the mushroom, page here. You guys can do all the, reading and all that, talking about microdosing, and this is the schedule and the dosing according to this website, and I haven't even checked any of the data that's coming off of it. So again, this is Riley Cote's version of this, and again, there's not going to be much data supporting psilocybin dosing, especially when we're already talking about how much cannabis lacks in data. So this is going to be even less. However, this is not to say that this isn't perhaps a good dosing schedule or not, but again, can't sit there and give it some sort of FDA approved backing by any means. Anyways, here recommending trying 0.12 grams of psilocybin per day, adjusting the amount accordingly after the first usage. Many people that find that's the perfect amount. 200 pounds, you may need to double that. So protocol is take mushroom microdose on day 1 and 2, then don't take it on 3 and 4, then repeat. Continue the process for 3 months and see where you're at. So again, helping you try to get that brain regulated to a controlled place, whether it works for you with or without using the drugs. That's the end goal. And so, all very interesting stuff. Anyways, let's move on. I think this kind of draws in a little bit more context for the theme of today's episode. And this is just an opinion article here, and we'll talk about this whole thing. But mindfulness is just a commercialized corporate speak for Buddhist-inspired self-help training, right? And this article is back in 2018, but I thought it's interesting because it's still all the crave and the rave today. But again, this is things that capitalism figured out a little bit previously. Maybe the schools don't exactly have this all taken care of, at least in the state of New Mexico. But listen to this. Andy Lee, an interesting job title. He's the company's chief mindfulness officer, and he's not employed at some voguish Silicon Valley startup or by a chain of organic food co-ops. He works for Aetna, an old-fashioned corporate giant as you could ever hope to find. In an interview with Healthy Workplace, author Lee Stringer, Aetna's mindfulness program was described in familiar terms. Participants are regaining 62 minutes per week per productivity. They are seeing an approximate dollar return in terms of productivity alone of more than 3,000 persons per year. Never mind karma, this is a bottom line issue. Mindfulness, a meditation practice that is in essence Buddhism without Buddha, is everywhere in corporate America and celebrity culture, right? Google offered a course under engineer guru Chade Meng Tan, employee number 107, that at one point had a 6-month-long waiting period. Meng has gone off since his own. Goldman Sachs has caught the mindfulness bug, used mindfulness app to keep employees mindful. Intel's on board, and a study undertaken by National Business Group on health and fidelity investments found that 1 in 5 companies surveyed offered mindfulness training, with another 21% planning to do so at a cost of up to $10,000 per session. So, very interesting. When they aren't pushing Haagen-Dazs out the door, General Mills employees and executives have access to 7-week mindfulness program. After completing the program, 80% of executives reported that their decision-making skills had improved. One wonders about that. Were the executives going to tell their superiors that their decision-making skills had been degraded, or that they wasted their time? Bear in mind, Haagen-Dazs doesn't have anything actually mean anything in any language. The guy who founded the company just thought it sounded cool and that people would buy it. So there may be a bit of work there too. Anyways, we have gotten into, neuroplasticity, mindfulness, meditation, so on and so forth in this podcast. I would say talk about it quite often, at least once a week. We talk about all types of different studies when we're discussing things like, mindfulness and how literally thoughts create, your reality. But again, you can control it. And, positive growth mindset kind of people really, really do change the world, really, really do help things out and about. And again, just as much as a healthy physiology that everybody wants homeostasis. One of the best non-pharmacological mechanisms there would truly just be meditation and mindfulness for self-regulation, right, on so many different levels. And the transition is there because I think this is important. It's just highlighting how corporations have obviously been looking at this forever. I can remember my high school football team, for instance. Our coach, he had us, really doing some of that personal discovery, and they would framework it in the matter of the team. But it really, after that point, interestingly enough, we hit a different level of growth. We won state last time that high school won state in football. Anyways, has been on that situation. But either way, you look at human psychology there, where it's an interesting use case that a group of 16 to 18-year-olds can be rallied to do something pretty dang big and be a team. Obviously, big organizations, people with much longer attention spans, fully developed adult brains. Corporations obviously should be really in tune with wanting their workers to be at their best, right? If you're at your personal best, you're going to be your most productive. Obviously, you're not going to know if you're at your personal best in that position, right? So this is, let me jump into this next segment here, because I thought this was cool. Recently, I just listened to a book called Principles by Ray Dalio. Highly recommend it. Some people don't like this book to some degree, but it's anything controversial is definitely worth reading. I think this is cool because, anyways, look at Bridgewater Associates. It's this company that this guy Ray Dalio built, billionaire, right? And looking at big financial, economic models in the world over, time and history, and when he's sitting there trading stocks and being a big, stockbroker, basically, they have to get down to the nitty gritty of each and every single, point of contention for how to make the best investment, right? And either way, you start looking at somebody who's looked at that data over really long periods of time, been looking at how to utilize the computer to thus, evaluate the human brain, people, any single data point you could look at when you can look at, people as an individual think about yourself as like a Mario Kart, with your stats, right? If you had some sort of stats, I'm agreeable X, Y, to whatever amount of every single data point that he collects, right? Using different tests. He's looking at things like the Myers-Briggs, MBTI, workplace personality inventory, and teams dimensions profile, and stratified systems theory. He puts a giant combination of that into an algorithm, has people do personality tests, and he can literally, right, through his business, help his managers know exactly how they are, know exactly how everybody in the company is, so you can put the right people in the right situations and all of those kinds of things. And, you look at the brain and you look at some of the things that cause our physiological responses that we use medicine, right, to correct or to help correct. Just makes you kind of really, 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 really look at the brain there. And just check this out, guys. What is radical open-mindedness? So again, to recognize truth, you must accept that you are wrong and relentlessly find ways to increase chances that you are right. Dalio called that radical open-mindedness. Taking in more information, especially from other highly credible people, you can only allow you to make better decisions, bringing you closer to your goal, right? So looking at that, understanding you're blind and that you need a way to see. Paying for mistakes is how you learn and that you are blind. Reviewing bad decisions that you made because you failed to see what others saw, asking others to help with figuring out your blind spots. Recognizing the importance of this mindset. If you willingly blind yourself and keep doing something wrong, you never maximize your potential. Even if you believe your baseline probability of being right is already high, it's always valuable to raise your probability of being right? And being open-minded to other viewpoints is how you raise the probability of being right. And looking at all of this, I'm taking you down to, of course, right, having that mindset of right here, being open-mindedness, being willing to be wrong and have discussions in groups of people, that are thoughtful, and not have your ego and your, impulsive parts of your brain to regulate the conversation versus actually just knowing you may only know this much and somebody else knows this much. Everybody has opinions based on how, their DNA is designed and how they are at that moment in time, right? With your stats. And again, all of that creates, literally value to your thoughts, right? And so looking at Ray Dalio and Bridgewater Associates, they literally have a decision-making, process and algorithm that can literally feed, decisions into a computer with everybody's stats and how everybody's going to look at something. You can look at things, how they play out over time, weigh the best of the best thoughts against each other and really, really cross-evaluate things, right? So you're looking, basically what I'm saying is, this is the best and brightest example of how they're doing it in the world to make, the best, brightest, most, financially tuned decisions, and where financial becomes the pulse of our basically society, for better or for worse, it really is, right? And again, he's able to look at it on an international level and do all kinds of insane things. And I think, you start looking at this, take a look. So mental maps, right? As he talks about here, times humility, charting yourself on two dimensions, humility and open-mindedness, and mental maps, or knowing what you know and how you reason. Let me show you. Give you the visual. So this is where it's all going to tie in together. So Ray Dalio, looking at himself and just his own blind spots. Obviously, the human race has its own, the human being, humanity has its own blind spots, right? You've got the human brain right here, for example. again, and you look at the human brain, right? You've got two sides of your brain working at all times. Everybody's going to be a little more or a little less one of these things. Left brain, logical, math plus science minded, realism predominates, planned and orderly, prefers nonfiction, focused on facts. Right brain, emotional, artistic and creative, imagination predominates, occasionally absent minded, prefers fiction, enjoys creative storytelling, right? So you look at all of those things and you look at, exactly how life goes. And he's, highly recommend you guys read this book and take a look at this whole entire thing. But I'm going to bring you guys to one other drawing here. This. Where he's talking about, where we strive to be so you can have the best point of view in terms of, making whatever decision that you may make in life or business, right? And again, decisions that you make affect your health. They affect, everybody around you. They affect your life, right? All function of that, at the inception of that, starts this little, device inside of your head, big mushy one, the brain, right? So your brain forms your thoughts, thoughts form your actions form your reality, and you start looking at all these things. And I'm taking you from there to here is like just very interesting to see on the big macro lens. Business, the business right here, it's obviously figured itself out. It's doing billions and billions, up there with Warren Buffett. What do they find, right? The best of the best people, the best of the best businesses can mix it all together, find the best, ditch the worst, right? And then continue to go. And this isn't about business. It's just about, life there. And how does something like, psilocybin mushrooms, right? Or cannabis or meditation or the combination of all of that with, other non-pharmacological, therapies, right? How does that help the brain do what it needs to do so that you can perceive the world in a way that you're not killing yourself, right? With whatever that may be, stress, bad thoughts, whatever it may be, right? So trying to dial that in and out. So as you guys see here, types of, where he's, looking at the brain, right? We've got our neocortex, that's your really higher level thinking. You've got the amygdala, where your basic level thinking, but also, that part of the brain that really can really be processing things like PTSD and all that's really going to start affecting all of that there. So where we have, prefrontal cortex that we're trying to see a lot of activity in when you see meditation and things as such, for that higher level thinking, right? That is able to, really put thoughts together, and you really think about it. It's just like, okay, well, maybe your life isn't going some way, and your thoughts are leading you to make indecisive decisions or lead to poor action or no action or whatever that may be, which leads to no results or poor results or vice versa. Again, all that ideally should start from the basis of a decision-making process. Obviously, maybe some people learn through pain. Maybe sometimes the pain thus hinders that decision-making process, which leads to more pain. Again, but the awareness there of that, I think, at the same time, is what people are looking for and looking to try to achieve with things like psilocybin, mushrooms, or cannabis, or meditation, yoga, cognitive behavioral therapy, so on and so forth. You start getting into all of that, and you're just trying to figure out how do you rewire your brain to, make good decisions so you can have a good life based on however you define that, and actually, be consistent with that every single day. And of course, right, it's total, psychological conditions exist, all this stuff exists, and that's true. It's just interesting to see that, the end goal would be to try to maximize, right, your mental maps there, being humble and open-minded, and having good mental maps, being able to really, view things out. People like psilocybin because it can, separate you from your ego, which might be sitting in that amygdala, right? And being able to take a different view on life and the world around you. Just all things that you're thinking, well, okay, you use drugs to achieve the outcome. This is actually the process of things that would be happening to get to that point. And then at that point, you've thought things out or you haven't thought things out. And either you've analyzed it correctly or not, obviously based on experiences, so on and so forth. And you talk about, Dalio and his radical open-mindedness. The more people, that have, merit, more people with more merit making a big collective decision obviously creates way better results because you can weigh it in every single way. But either way, looking at maximizing that for yourself, looking at how to just think about where, the corporatized solution of Goldman Sachs and their mindfulness apps and things like that, right, actually help, if people are making good decisions in life, they're going to be making good decisions at work, if they're, so on and so forth. And maybe they don't do both, but really it does catch up over that period of time. You're either, probably a good decision maker with a growth mindset, ideally with what people want to be, at to lead a better quality of life, or a bad decision maker with a fixed mindset and, again, could get you stuck. And maybe your mix is of it all at certain different times. And how do you just kind of ride that? Thinking about this and thinking about how the brain looks, really, I think, maps out a different mental picture there for, having that sense of control over it. You see, obviously, I don't know why I'm not remembering his name, Huberman's lab, Dr. Huberman there, talking a lot about, all this neuroscience and all these things. Again, it's all stuff that's been figured out. It's all based on experience. There's still a lot more to figure out, but again, your awareness of it could perhaps help you not beat yourself up so much, help you kind of see how to get from A to B to Z, or whatever it's going to be. Fixing problems, living and enjoying life. Enlightenment hour. Hope you guys get some value out of that. That's right, let's look at this. Herbal Wellness Corner. How cannabis helped NHL enforcer Riley Cote survive his hockey career. So wanted to talk about his story there. So again, professional hockey, one of the world's most physically demanding sports. NHL players take a beating night in, night out for over 80 games a season. Riley Cote, former left winger for the Flyers, knows that pain all too well. During his 8 years as an enforcer for the Flyers, Cote would often wake up sore and swollen after a night on the ice. So what did that mean? He racked up more than 50 fights with the Flyers from 2006 to 2010 as incredibly dedicated to clean medicine and botanical health and healing. Body care regimen has always or longly included cannabis. From an early age, he found cannabis to be extremely helpful in managing his natural pain. So, he learned from his sister, who actually had to manage multiple sclerosis with the help of measured intake of natural foods and cannabis. So, coming from Canada, got introduced to it there out in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And, guess I grew up in the middle of the Canadian drug culture. It said when I was first introduced to it, it was obviously completely on a recreational level. He partied, drink, someone passing around a joint. But as his hockey career progressed, he turned pro with the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2002 at age 20. Cote soon realized that cannabis offered serious therapeutic help as well. It wasn't until I really got to about 20 years or older when I started my pro hockey career, really started to understand the therapeutic benefits. That's when I started fighting in hockey specifically, really started catching the wear and tear. So I think it started resonating to me that this is helping me to manage my pain, calming my nerves and anxiety of fighting, helping me sleep and recover. He also added, it was one of those things that resonated well. It was a positive experience, helped calm the nerves, a reason you go back to something. Some would argue it's addictive nature, but it's not. It's a subtle healing energy. We're trying to keep things in balance, keep things intact. And I think cannabis does a good job at the spiritual level and mental clarity level to bring calmness to oneself. With Cote discovering therapeutic benefits of cannabis in his early days as a pro hockey player he would quietly consume during the season, there would always be a couple of guys on the team who would also be cannabis consumers, so they would get together. Even though the NHL does not test for it, it was still really taboo back then. So the idea of him talking about his experiences, positive ones seemed threatening for his career and the things that he loved. So he did it quietly, did it regularly. Anyways, one of the many that has done it in the professional career, talking about where you're using that, why you're using that is, I think, all incredibly good points to, just discuss, because he needed to be able to separate his brain from, right, the rage or the anticipation of the game, right, or making a bad decision, right. He needed to be able to get into a flow state. And, a perfect example there of someone who's, really turned it around and been able to do that. And again, it's not with the traditional Western medicine system, but I mean, I hate to say it, there's a reason it's, without being a conspiracy theorist, I guess is what I'm trying to say, there's a reason that it's probably been stigmatized. So we're talking about the endocannabinoid system, guys. I just want to talk about that amygdala and the endocannabinoid system real quick, because we were showing the amygdala a little earlier when I was showing a little bit of the radical transparency stuff. Boom. Anyways, that amygdala or basic emotion place right there. You guys, the endocannabinoid system functions. Anyways, ECS is an important target in treating anxiety and trauma-related disorders due to the density of CB1 receptors in a brain region called the amygdala. And in the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system, the amygdala plays a large role in modulating fear and anxiety. And its response to anxiety-provoking cues is exaggerated in people with anxiety disorders. Stimulating CB1 can dampen this excessive activity. Similarly, the sympathetic nervous system contains CB1 receptors that will also dampen excessive activity related to physical effects of anxiety, like those described up to above related to panic attacks. So, you really look at the amygdala and the role that the amygdala is playing. CB1 receptors there in the amygdala and sympathetic nervous system can control excessive reactivity to anxiety-provoking cues. And again, being a professional athlete, very hard, to manage. And either way, everybody's got trauma, anxiety in life. Maybe not everybody, and if you don't, great. But again, how can you get to that point of helping to identify that your amygdala is just needing a little bit of modulation, and whether you can control that through breathing and recognition, or you may need to achieve something through mindfulness, meditation, and psychedelic assisted therapies such as cannabis or psilocybin. Riley Cote, a perfect example for today, December 28th, 2023, I think, he really drives home the point of getting, through that threshold. A lot of professional athletes, really have a hard time getting out of that professional athlete scene. A lot of them blow all their money, screw it up. I don't know if it's not all of them, right? But again, that's the worst, right? Or you're so injured, not insured, having a hard time, and not able to get out and transition into your civilian life to those degrees. Same thing for soldiers or veterans or war heroes. Those amygdalas are insane. Have you guys, seen shell shock and those sorts of pictures and videos, guys? Shell shock is, that's real. That's very, very real. And those physiological responses, again, how do you modulate that? How do you separate, such a pre-programmed response in that amygdala? Obviously cannabis has a good way of disassociating and stimulating those receptors, getting that amygdala regulated so that your other parts of your brain can thus exist, because you have a very big and luscious brain. So again, I hope that helps. A little bit of recognition there on, I think, that desired outcome, a whole lot of in between. Really think on it on a big scale. Everybody wants the same thing. All right, guys, Mountain View Medical Group, osteopathic medicine in Las Cruces. Got to highlight these guys in our community spotlight today, brought to you by the Baked Chicken Farm. We've got our School of Osteopathy, the Burrell School of Medicine here in Las Cruces, a great school for all those doctor of osteopathies to be. And awesome residency program over at our Mountain View Medical Hospital. As a recent success case here, our newborn actually had to go and get a couple manipulations and massage kind of techniques done because she came out, I don't know how to say it. She didn't come out off, but yeah, she just came out and something in the occipital lobe, right, or was just like a little off, and it did need a little manipulation. That manipulation affected her like gastrointestinal and heartburn, which was terrible. And then 2 adjustments later, I mean, we are 8 weeks in, sitting pretty dang good and very blessed. Hope that all stays, but very, very, very cool. I don't think a lot of people are aware that there is these DOs are out here in town. We're looking for a lot of primary care and stuff, but you do look at a lot of these other underlying physiological things that are happening in the body where the brain might have put the body in a wrong place due to some sort of traumatic response. Somebody who can actually look and feel at that part of the body and then understand kind of those inner physiological processes. That's pretty cool. And it's not the same as a chiropractor, guys. It's not. I'm telling you, these people are awesome. So shout out to the team there. Kate Nixon was the one who saw us, but again, great stuff up at Mountain View Regional. Our last thing, guys, nutrition for heart health, simple changes and big impacts. I'm going to share this one real quick. So looking at this, the NCHPAD, guys, want to give you dietary implications for reducing your risk for heart disease. A couple challenges: increasing high fiber foods, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Can you increase it? Can you reduce the amounts of saturated fat, such as meat, high fat dairy products, trans fats, such as margarine, baked goods, and some snacks? Limiting alcohol, defining moderate drinking as no more than 2 drinks per day. But big one here, increasing intake of omega-3 fatty acids. I think this is something that most guys can do without even much effort. You can just buy your omega-3 over the counter, try to get that DHA as high as you possibly can. 500 and above would be great. Take that daily. But again, research has shown that they are associated with keeping blood vessels healthy, keeping the blood pressure down, helping with inflammation. Omega-3s, supplementing it with fish oil, great. Obviously, if you can, eat avocado and nuts and salmon every single day, it's awesome. But I would just say, all you guys out there, take fish oil every day. And good night, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.